on the flip side.
Can Republicans do health care? Last time we talked about the free market, whether it can fix our current healthcare situation in America. And we talked about looking at healthcare as a tax system. And what we'll get to today, conservative opposition to universal healthcare, also some comments on whether the US can actually achieve a more egalitarian concept of healthcare. Of course, I'll still be using the book Priced Out by Uwe Reinhardt, the same book that I've been using for the past couple of videos. I want to start out and talk about two types of health insurance, specifically two types of health insurance premiums. Health insurance premiums, like a tax, are a pool that each member pays money into, and then they receive benefits from when needed. The second thing we need to know, with any large group of people, there's going to be a bunch who don't use health services that much. These people tend to be younger and richer. There's also going to be a much smaller group that accounts for the bulk of healthcare services. These people tend to be older and poorer. We can think of it this way. Half of people account for this small slice of healthcare spending, whereas only 5% of people account for almost half of healthcare spending. So when an insurance company is going to charge a premium, they have two different options: medically underwritten plans and community rated plans. For medically underwritten plans, accountants obtain a detailed medical history of each member to determine the likelihood that they'll get sick. They then charge that member a corresponding price. The sicker you are, or as tends to be the case, the poorer or older you are, the more you're gonna pay. Obviously, this is labor intensive. An insurance agent must evaluate each member's individual medical risk. A large part of each healthcare dollar spent then by the insurance company is basically just an accounting procedure with no health benefit to the members. The second option that a health insurance company could use for its premiums, a community rated plan, where insurers calculate the average healthcare spending of a population and then determine one premium, which is then charged to everyone. In this case, those with less healthcare usage, which again tends to be the younger and richer, have a higher premium than they would under a medically underwritten plan. But those with more healthcare usage, the older and poorer, tend to have a lower premium. If this sounds like a form of redistribution, you're correct. It's much like a tax. Those with less healthcare expenses subsidize the cost for those with more. Now, which premium do you think conservatives prefer? The conservative understanding of health is all about lifestyle. And this makes sense. The purest of them believe in a meritocracy.
Because we are now in a merit-based world. We're a merit-based country.
Your lot in life is up to your decisions. Health then reflects morality. If you make good choices, you'll be healthy and you'll be rewarded with a lower insurance premium. If you make bad choices, you'll get sick more, and so it's fair for you to pay a higher premium. It's all very logical, it's black and white, it's a balancing of the scales.
It's not about what I want. It's about what's fair!
The economic argument that conservatives make for medically underwritten plans is that they incentivize healthy choices. And of course, your average conservative recognizes that sometimes sickness is out of a person's hands, but these cases are outliers, right? We should emphasize personal responsibility and adhering to human nature. BMI is natural.
Doctors know that. Like, they can look at you and say, you look obese and your BMI is like 30, so probably you're obese.
Heterosexuality, natural.
And I made it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Self-control, a naturally developed skill.
You'd be listening to your monkey mind, as monks like to call it, and ultimately your reality wouldn't really reflect anything high frequency. If you were
Mental health, It's about being just normal.
I believe that transgenderism specifically is a mental health disorder.
It's within everyone's nature to be healthy. So if you're unhealthy, then you're missing some aspect of being human. And these are the moral convictions of conservatives.
You're afraid I'm gonna come at you again, but you're protecting yourself because the world wants to destroy us.
But we know these beliefs aren't the case. Humans are so very varied in their nature. The idea of normalcy is a lie, but it's a powerful one. If we think we aren't fitting into some standard, we'll contort ourselves to it. The normalcy we think we see is a product of our desire to fit in. Okay, back to conservatives in healthcare. So when it comes time for conservatives to do healthcare, they advocate for things like a reduction in welfare policies. Again, they want to motivate people out of poverty. You can see these conservative policies in action in the proposed 2017 Republican healthcare package to replace the big boogeyman,
Obamacare! The boogeyman is taking over!
The Republican package called for a reduction in Medicaid funds, a reduction in tax credits for those buying health insurance in the marketplace, but hey, let's give a tax break to the rich. And there are always consequences, which, I mean, is something that the conservatives like to say themselves.
You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl.
Number one, the creation of high-risk pools. While they might not say it to your face, what conservatives want is for the old and the poor to pay more for healthcare. Why should the young and the rich have to help pay for other people's healthcare? Remember, medically underwritten plans mean that the more you get sick, the more you pay. And when 5% of the population accounts for 50% of healthcare costs, that 5% will be paying out the wazoo. Or, as is often the case, they're just gonna go without insurance because their premiums would be too high. And this explains why we don't have universal healthcare in the US. Oh shit, okay. There's a problem though that I didn't talk about with community-rated health plans. Adverse risk selection, and its final form, the health insurance death spiral. Community-rated plans incentivize healthier people, especially younger ones who believe themselves, to just skip the whole insurance fiasco. I'll be fine. Here, hold my beer. When a large group of healthy people leave a plan, that shifts the relative sickness and in turn the premiums of the remaining people up. This adverse risk selection essentially becomes the new community-rated premium. But then those who might not have been as young but are still pretty healthy also decide to forego health insurance since costs have gone up. So they leave and the average premium increases again. This is the health insurance death spiral. Now, this pesky death spiral poses a real conundrum for policymakers trying to design an affordable healthcare plan. But I mean, what choice do they have? It's not like they can mandate people buy health insurance. That would be insane. It would definitely be every libertarian's
Boogeyman!
Yeah, so it turns out the government can actually just require that people have health insurance, which solves this adverse risk selection problem. But that's so un-American. I mean, why would the government force me to pay for some plebes' health care? If I had a nickel for every time I heard the phrase health insurance mandate on Fox News as a kid. To be fair, it is kind of weird from a certain perspective. Why am I being forced to pay for health insurance if I'm healthy? Maybe the issue is how we're framing it. It's less about forcing health insurance on young people and more about the civic duty to contribute to healthcare for their
fellow Americans.
And if that sounds like a tax, then you got it. Now, remember, medically underwritten plans that charge higher premiums for poorer and older folk are just one component of the conservative health plan. They also want to reduce Medicaid and reduce taxes on the rich. Conservative healthcare? More like regressive healthcare, am I right? Uwe Reinhardt, the author of Priced Out, is like, yeah, that's a valid position. Just be upfront about what you're doing. Don't cult your policies in a lie about raising all boats or whatever. Because to me, that tide looks like it's favoring some boats over others. Speaking of Reinhardt, he's got some choice words for our American healthcare system. Our government is too corrupt to have a single-payer health insurance model. Egalitarian precepts aren't compatible with American preferences. The founding fathers gave us an impotent government that acts quite irresponsibly. That's actually a direct quote of his. America's an aristocracy with a corporate elite completely divorced from the rest of America. Obamacare was a band-aid of an already ugly wound of a health insurance system. I mean, I think someone said something about don't Yeah. So based on what we've seen here today, it's clear we need everyone to participate in paying for the entirety of our healthcare costs. A straight up tax would make a lot of sense, but Reinhardt is more accommodating. His proposal is the 26-year-old's health insurance decision. At age 26, every American will choose one of two health insurance options. Option A, join a community-rated plan, pay a higher rate when you're younger, and enjoy a lower premium when you're older. Option B, you decide. Do you want to be uninsured? You want to try a medically underwritten plan? The choice is yours. But in either option, no takesy-backsies. Takesies-backsies? Is it takesies-backsies or takesy-backsies? Okay, once you choose, you're locked in, which would essentially serve as like a soft mandate. You aren't really mandated to have insurance unless you're in the community rated pool. Reinhardt's not a barbarian though. If someone did choose option B and tried to make it on their own and they couldn't afford it,
Should have gone with A.
they would still be eligible for Medicaid. A lot of what Reinhardt says rings true. The US is not an egalitarian society. We like to make our own choices. We like our experiment of the states. So Reinhardt says, let's experiment. Divide healthcare financing between those who see it as a system we all chip into versus those who want to forge their own path in life independent of others. There was this interview Reinhardt did in 2013 with your boy Ezra Klein, where he seems genuinely optimistic about the state of healthcare in 2013. He talks about how it's a field very concerned with quality and efficiency, how it would take just $190 billion, which is the amount of money we waste on healthcare administration, to cover the uninsured. But he also expresses a somewhat blind optimism in technological progress, which I think speaks to his being first and foremost an economist. The decades since this interview has shown that the promise of innovation to solve issues of healthcare inequality are unconvincing. The idea of an app sending monthly reports of your weight fluctuations as a component of a resilient healthcare system is not only naive, but it's just a misunderstanding of what health even is. Even worse is his allusion to the gamification of health. Like, what if Duolingo but for your weight, I guess?
Gamification. This idea that if we take something that we want to do and we attach point values to it, we attach a reward system to it, we create some kind of larger structure, we break down our big nebulous goals into small achievable goals that we get points for, we basically can do anything we want to. Our brains are self-motivated by it.
Yeah, it's a conservative understanding of health to the worst degree, and it relies on that personal responsibility to fix a system that's built on inequality. Priced Out came out in 2017, and it was Uwe Reinhardt's last book before his death. His wife and fellow economist included that 2013 interview in an epilogue meant to round out Reinhardt's view on the American healthcare system. But reading the rest of the book, it seems like in the short span from 2013 to 2017, Reinhardt became more cynical of America's ability to devise a better healthcare system. We all saw the fall from Obama-era optimism to the resurgence of fascism in 2016. And while we're fighting that at the moment, one day we'll need to return back to this question of how we can develop a more egalitarian healthcare system, in which case Reinhardt might prove to be a good voice to look back to. For now, just don't forget to get vaccinated. All right, and that is a wrap on Priced Out. I was gonna include this discussion that Reinhardt briefly talks about HSAs, because I think those are kind of all the rage nowadays, HSAs and FSAs. I think that's something that the current administration is fond of. And I didn't get into it, but here are just some of the things that Reinhardt had to say about it. You can't even see it all clearly because I've overlapped it because I wasn't prepared to talk about it. But if that sounds like something interesting, I could do a short little video on that. And if not, I'll just find some other book to talk about next time. See ya.
Smells like teenagers.